Hello and welcome to another Mr. Munner's IB video. Today we're going to be looking at cause and effect statements and how we can use cause and effect statements to maximize the quality of our analysis and ultimately to write really impactful claims and topic sentences. So let's get started. Today's focus is going to be looking through the lens of Black Mirror as a non-literary text. So this is a claim that I've seen many of you make in your essays. Something like in Black Mirror, Brooker explores how Lacey is impacted by the social credit system. And the problem that I see with this as a claim is that it really is drawn through the text itself rather than actually establishing an idea. And we want to establish how Brooker as the author is actually creating the meaning and the essential message he is making about the global issue. And the problem with this claim is that it does neither of these things. It doesn't actually make a comment on the global issue, nor does it actually make a comment about a choice that Brooker makes. So what we want to do is actually make claims that are actually conveying the messages that Brooker or the creator of the text is making about your global issue. And we can do that by being more explicit about exactly what the authorial choice is. In this case, it's the color filter, and what the authorial choice is saying about the global issue. In this case, that the color filter helps Brooker to explore how individuals are harmed by overbearing surveillance and societal control. And of course, as you move through your essay, you would be exploring and expanding upon this idea. Our second example here looks more broadly at the anthology, and this is to emphasize that this is something that you're doing not just in the zoom in on your extract, but also when you're zooming out on your wider extract. In this case, the sentence is looking at the episode structure and using that to highlight the harm that the deceptive nature of social media does to the identity of individuals. And what I want to show you today is how you can actually use cause and effect statements to write sentences like this, sentences that are impactful, sophisticated, and gets to the central meaning that is being made by the creator of texts. So what we want to start with is looking at what we've called the 4 C's. The 4 C's are the elements that go into creating meaning as students of literature. So the 4 C's are the changes, the connections, the concepts, and the conventions. The conventions are the choices made by the writer. Okay, they are the literary devices, they are the film devices, they are the dramatic conventions, they are whatever the author is doing or the creator of the text is doing in order to create that meaning. Those conventions, those choices made by the writer, are what leads to the changes, the connections, and the commentary on concepts, which are the effects on the reader. So the conventions are creating the meaning, they are affecting the reader, and they're leading to our understanding of the changes, the connections, and the commentary on concepts. So they're creating meaning at 2 different levels. Obviously, the changes are what we are seeing within the actual text itself. They're the changes that occur in the characters, they're the changes that might occur in the setting, they're the changes that occur at any stage within the novel or within whatever text we're studying. And the connections are those connections that we make between characters. There might be connections that we make to symbols. There might be connections that we make to particular themes, particular views and values. Ultimately, they are the connections that we are making as readers of the text. These changes and connections are first level effects. They're how we as readers make sense of the text. They're how we understand what is happening within the text, what the characters are saying, and what the author is saying about the characters, about the settings, and about the goings on that's happening within the text. Essentially, these changes and connections help us to understand the text itself. but they don't necessarily allude to the overarching messages that are being made. They can, of course, and ultimately these changes and connections are what lead to our understanding and to the messages that are being conveyed, but they are actual meanings outside of the text in itself. The concepts are what leads to these second level effects. That is the deeper level meanings that connects to the text as a whole, and it allows us to understand the text as interpreters. That is how it applies to the global issue. That is how it explicitly relates to the views and values and the commentary of what the author's message is about the wider world, about our society that we live in today. So changes and connections are those first level effects. They're what help us to understand the text through the things that are changing over the course of the novel and the connections that we make with various elements. And then the comments are those second level effects that help us to understand the deeper meanings, the overarching messages, and the connections to the global issues. In your writing, you should always be connecting causes and effects at both first level and second level. Limited interpretations often come from a result of an imbalance here. Either too much focus on the causes, that is too much focus on the conventions, so just literary device, literary device, literary device, literary device, without an exploration of the actual effects, or too much detailed exploration of effects without specific identification and exploration of conventions. Today, we're working on identifying causes and effects in order to make our analysis clearer and more succinct. Below are some random examples of each of the 4 Cs. For conventions, we have first person, flashback, allegory, etc. These conventions, poetic devices in poetry, dramatic conventions in plays, they're film devices within film and television, they're literary devices that we see in the novels. And ultimately, you have the common conventions as well. Things like symbolism, things like irony, things like flashback, things like allegory, things that we see within all literature. And that's not to mention the non-literary conventions that we see as well. Things like persuasive devices that we would see in a persuasive text, and other non-literary devices as well. The second C is changes. These can be changes in perspective, changes in time, changes from literal description to abstract or symbolic, turning points in mood, in tone, in content, change in character or opinion, rise and fall in tension. All of these are changes. The connections can be made to motifs. Connections can be made between different events and actions. They can be repeated structures and sentences. They can be connections to metaphor and simile, parallelism, alternative perspectives, etc. And then lastly, we have the concepts. Often the concepts that we see are things connected to things like death and life, identity, things like hope, coming of age, feminism, love and hate. We've seen a commentary on the idea of utopia or dystopia in Black Mirror. We've seen the comment on power and corruption in The Great Gatsby. Each of the texts we study has a different series of concepts that are going to be connected into. And you need to work at identifying how the conventions are leading to a commentary on the relevant concepts within your text or non-literary text. So let's have a look at this screenshot. This is obviously from the episode of Black Mirror Nosedive. And what we want to do here is we want to identify the conventions. What can we actually observe in terms of what the author is doing? Now, the acronym CAMELS, so camera angle, acting, mise-en-scène, editing, lighting, and sound, is going to be really useful in you identifying those features, those film conventions. And you're going to be identifying the connections that are being made. This might be a connection to another episode. It could be a connection to an earlier or later scene. It could be a change that you see in the characterization, a change that you see in tone. There's many different things that you can see here. And then ultimately, as we dig deeper, we're going to be looking for concepts. What are the overarching concepts, themes, views and values, and connections to global issues that we can observe from this screenshot here? You might want to pause, have a go at doing this yourself before we move into a worked example. Okay, now you've had a chance to do that. These are some prompts that you might want to be looking at. Sorry, I'll give you another chance to do that. Okay, so these are some prompts that you might want to look at. What changes in the screenshot? What connections are being made within the screenshot to the rest of the episode, to other episodes? What connections are there to themes in the episode? What big ideas, deeper meanings are important in the text? And what links are made to the global issue? And lastly, what are the significant film devices and literary conventions being used by the author in this extract? Okay, now take a pause. And this is going to be our worked example. We're making a series of cause and effect statements based on the passage. And what I want us to do is, after we've identified the convention, we've identified the change, the connection, or the concept, I want you to connect them together. So you're going to be structuring it so that the author's name is first. So the author, in this case, Brooker uses a particular convention to have this effect. Could be a link to a change, a connection, or to a concept. So we have three here. The first one is Brooker's use of mise-en-scène illustrates the parasocial tendencies of social media and the ways such media leads to human detachment. The second one, Brooker positions each of the characters facing the same direction, illustrating how social media strips the tendency for social interaction. And the third one, the characters' hunched over posture, combined with a melancholic focus solely on their phones, highlights the alienating tendency of social media engagement, illustrating how social media requires a high level of attention, yet offers little emotional sustenance in return. You might want to have a look at how you can break down where these examples have identified convention and whether they're identifying a change, a connection, or a concept. So let's look at a worked example. We're going to be looking at this first example here. Okay. So that is Brooker's use of mise-en-scène illustrates the parasocial tendencies of social media and the way such media leads to human detachment. And what I've done here is I've used two different concepts to create different ideas based on a single convention. So we have the first one. Brooker's use of mise-en-scène highlights an impact that social media can have in reinforcing uniformity and discouraging personal growth. It is only at the end of the episode, when Lacey is free of the pressures of the social platform, that she truly experiences self-actualization. And then the second one, Brooker's use of mise-en-scène illustrates the parasocial tendencies of social media and the way such media leads to human detachment. We have two different ideas here. We can see that the convention here is the use of mise-en-scène, okay, just like in the worked example earlier. The first example here links that convention to a change that occurs in the episode. Okay, that is the change in Lacey's characterization. That by the end of the episode, she's free of the pressures of the social platform, and thus is able to experience personal growth and experience self-actualization. Obviously, there's a bit of a spelling error there or a grammatical error there. But ultimately, this is that start of that change. Here, she's completely absorbed in the social media platform. She's trying to achieve the social media growth as opposed to actually personal growth. And we can see that in the actual idea that's being conveyed. But take note that this idea here is only in the way that we as readers are actually making sense of the episode. It doesn't relate to the overarching ideas that are being made about our world itself. The second one does, however. The second one links into an actual concept. It's linking into the parasocial tendencies of social media within our lives and the ways that such media leads to human detachment. Both of these obviously relate to quite sophisticated ideas, but hopefully you can see how the first one relates to how meaning occurs within the episode itself, but the second one is how that meaning relates to the wider world, how it actually relates to our world, and how it actually comments on what Brooker is saying about the nature of social media within reality, okay, as opposed to just within the episode, which is in that yellow first example. Okay, so what we're seeing here is how we can apply two different conventions to two different ideas. The first one is a first level idea. It relates to a change that occurs within the episode. The second relates to a concept and thus is that deeper idea. Let's look at another worked example. In this worked example, we're going to be breaking down three different ideas. Now, each of these ideas relates to either a change, a connection, or a convention. And they do it in different ways. So we've broken down this first one. Now, Brooker's use of mise-en-scène illustrates the parasocial tendencies of social media and the way such media leads to human detachment. Okay. Each sentence identifies a film tech device from the episode, the first one being the use of mise-en-scène. The second one is the way that Brooker positions each of the characters facing in the same direction. And the third one is looking at the characters' hunched over posture combined with their melancholic focus solely on their phone. Take note, however, that as we move down these examples, they become more and more detailed. The analysis effectively becomes closer. In the first one, we're just looking at the mise-en-scène overall. We're looking at something quite broad. In the second one, we're looking at the positioning of the characters and the fact that they're all facing in the same direction. In the third one, we even go even more focused and we looked at how they're hunched over their phone. So we're looking at their acting. We're looking at how that's combined with their melancholic facial expressions and how their focus is solely on their phone. So as we move down these examples, we're becoming more and more closer with our analysis. What this enables us to do is essentially become more detailed with our analysis and more sophisticated with our description of it. So the first one relates to a broad idea about the parasocial tendencies of social media. The second one is more specific and it looks at how social media strips the tendency for social interaction. So it's essentially the ways that that parasocial social media actually achieves the lack of social interaction, strips it away. And the third one is taking it a step further. It's looking at how social media requires a high level of attention, yet offers little emotional sustenance in return. Ultimately, as we move down these examples, the analysis becomes closer and it also becomes more sophisticated. I wouldn't say, sorry, let me rephrase that. Not necessarily more sophisticated, but probably more nuanced. Okay, it's becoming more nuanced because it's looking at something more specific. Okay, so some of the statements that you use will connect to first level effects. Some statements will connect to second level effects. Both are fine. However, the job of a paragraph is to use analysis to develop these statements into convincing second level of interpretations. Within your IO, within your individual oral, you need to be exploring the global issue. You need to be analysing how the author is using the extract and the wider text and the conventions within both in order to talk about the global issue. So obviously, you need to be doing those second level interpretations. So let's look at identifying the difference between a first and second level effect. The first example here. Brooker employs the symbolism of costume in order to depict the changes in Lacey's sense itself. Obviously here, our convention is the symbolism of costume. Now, the meaning here is a connection to a change in order to depict the changes in Lacey's sense of self. Obviously, this is a first level effect. It's looking specifically at Lacey's character. The second one, sorry, this is our answer key. The second one is looking at the device of Lacey's unwilling sacrifice of her own dignity, and how this alludes to the need for Lacey to free herself from the repressive cyclic nature of society's oppressive social attitudes. This probably links to both a concept on the second level, but also to characterization. So we could maybe make the argument that this is also a connection, but it certainly looks at quite a sophisticated idea, and it certainly looks at the thematic overarching themes that we see within the episode. And the third one looks at both. So within the extract, Brooker uses a long shot camera angle in order to establish the true scope of the repression Lacey is weighed down by, and thus the harm over surveillance can have on an individual's dignity and their ability to be freely expressive. So here we see a connection to a change. So this long shot enables Brooker to establish the true scope of the repression Lacey's weighed down by. Then we look at the concept, that is the harm of surveillance, and how it limits dignity and how it limits our ability to be truly and freely expressive. Now it's your turn. This is another screenshot from Nosedive. Have a go at analysing how this screenshot creates meaning. Look for the elements of camels, as we looked at before. So that is camera angle, acting, mise-en-scène, editing, lighting, and sound. You might want to use the table that I've shown here. Or you might want to look at the prompts that are on the page here. So it's your turn. Make a series of not just links to the different concepts, connections, changes, and conventions, but turning those into actual cause and effect statements that can actually create sophisticated ideas and sophisticated analysis. Okay, what I want you to do now is choose your statements to use as the starting point of a paragraph. What I'm hoping that you've noticed is that these sort of statements can make really good topic sentences. But not only can they make really good topic sentences, they can also make really good pieces of analysis. And hopefully what you're identifying is that connecting cause and effect statements throughout your discussion can make for a really good piece of discussion. So read your paragraph. Your topic sentence should connect cause with effect by linking a convention with either a concept, a connection, or a change. Your evidence should be in the form of a cause. It should be a convention. You should use specific examples, that's connection to camels, and quotes. Explain where you can see the conventions in the film, and be specific with deeper analysis. Then you should elaborate. You should explain why the convention creates meaning and why it responds to the prompt. And lastly, you should have a closing sentence. This closing sentence should be a more definitive statement about how the idea relates to the message Brooker is making. There should be a progression of thinking from the topic sentence. This is essentially your body paragraph. This is how you're putting your discussion together. You're starting with the topic sentence, then you're leading to some evidence. You're using the evidence to elaborate on why the convention creates meaning and why it responds to your global issue. And then lastly, you should be more explicit about the message that Brooker is making and make explicit connections to the topic sentence. We will go over your speech structure in a subsequent presentation or video. So please take note of that one if you need to. Thank you. That's all I've got for you today. Please look at these other videos right here. And thank you very much for watching.